morning and welcome to the Workforce Observer. We are very pleased to have with us today Ann Swain, founder and global CEO of APSCo, an international trade body representing the professional recruitment sector with operations in the UK, Germany, Singapore, and Australia. Anne and her team actively advocate for the industry in regard to government policy developments. In addition, she is a popular speaker, author, and has chaired the European team in the popular Top Recruiter documentary series. Welcome, Anne.
Hello. Actually, Subhadra, I need to update you because just recently we also opened in Malaysia, actually. So it's in Kuala Lumpur, opening our new setup there in Malaysia. So we're Singapore and Malaysia.
Well, congratulations on the expansion.
Wonderful.
And let's talk about the recruitment industry, which has faced a particularly tough time, I would say, over the last 2 years. How would you describe this downturn? Because, given your decades of experience, it's just different, I think, this one. And how is it different?
I think it's totally different from what we've grown used to. And I started in the recruitment market as a graduate trainee. So that's quite a long time ago. I generally say about 100 years ago. It's not quite that. But the reality is, we're used to kind of 8 year cycles with upturns and downturns. What I would say about this is that there's a number of factors that have combined to make it very difficult. So we had obviously lockdown. Then we had 22 when everything was flying. And actually, after that first quarter, certainly in the UK, the first quarter of 23, things fell off a cliff. I would say that they fell faster and further than I've ever seen in all my years in the recruitment market. And I think what's also quite interesting is because of a number of geopolitical factors, economic factors, technology affecting things, it's been so difficult to try and predict when that market's coming back. And what we're used to doing is having some economic downturn, but you can see further ahead and predict and
Right.
make plans. I think things are quite up in the air still, although I have to say, in the UK, there is the beginning of a turnaround. Actually,
There
a
is.
little
Okay.
one. I'm really
I
feeling that. And we've got some signs of it here in APSCo, which is great.
I think the confusing thing for people, for most people, has been the fact that the GDP, even when the GDP was up, you know, staffing was down. And usually that's not the case. You see some correlation where, it's up, this is up. What was that? And this was
Think
globally.
again about not understanding what's going on. So even if you looked at GDP growth, it's been
Right,
relatively small in most countries. And
right,
the recruitment market is, especially the UK one, is an internationally based recruitment market. So a lot of
right,
our members, a huge proportion, recruit in other places. And also in our market, we're quite specifically oriented around different particular sectors in those professional markets. And consequently, if you look at IT, which was my background actually, IT recruitment, that fell off that cliff and hasn't really come back. When we used to ITing holding everything up, we found the healthcare sector, a lot of the public sector markets doing well. But then you look in the States when that traveling nurse sector kind of dried up, and that
right,
affected again things quite broadly. So I think
right.
where people have been quite niche in their recruitment sectorial specification, some niches have been doing well, but the majority just haven't. It's about confidence. I think recruitment and end user customers spending money on investing in staff on a permanent basis, even on a contract basis, is all about confidence. And there hasn't been confidence. And there's the problem.
That's a very fair answer. What about, I mean, forget the US. What about the hiring? What does that look like? Both, I'm not even talking about contract or perm, just in general. Is there still not much confidence around hiring, or are we seeing it change a little bit? Because you had said in the beginning that
Yeah, I think a lot of talent acquisition people at those end user clients are still grappling with feeling that they probably do have head count that they can now utilize and recruit, but actually decisions are taking an awful long time. So I think some of the requirements that have come out in the last 6 months in the market have really been talent acquisition testing the market rather than being real slots that they're looking to hire on. And so decisions are taking too long. There's a lot of work that we do in recruitment with no fee because it's often contingent based and
right,
contingent on success. And so consequently, where there have been requirements, there hasn't always been the revenue following because the end user
right,
clients are testing but not hiring. Now, we
right,
know after a recessionary period of any kind, generally it's the contract requirements that come out first of all. I've seen
right.
a lot of perm requirements coming out, not necessarily being hired upon, but actually perhaps a contractor taken on in those places. And it's bubbling away now. It's just coming back.
Okay, I can't avoid the question, politics, and I mean, I want to talk a little bit specifically about the UK and Germany, because the political landscape has been shifting. How has this impacted the recruitment industry, and what challenges and including opportunities does it present for APSCo members?
Yeah, I think the German political situation hasn't changed dramatically at all. And so with Mers now in power, there's a little wobble at the beginning of that. That's not a huge change. And so things are much more stable, I would say, in Germany. But obviously in the UK, we've got a Labour government, having had 14 years of a Conservative government. What we've been used to actually historically through different governments is that when it's a Labour government, socialist government, that there's more infrastructure growth, money spent in the public sector on providing services and growth of infrastructure. So, in the recruitment market, from that point of view, those
Right.
companies do relatively well if that's their specialist area. But then we look at a number of things that will affect the commercial market. Those will be obviously affected by the economy, and that hasn't picked up. There's been talk of growth, but there's been taxation on staff. So, actually, national insurance contribution, which is really that part of taxation that is looking to cover people's pensions and some of those other public services, that's gone up quite heavily, which has affected things. We also expect with any socialist government to have quite a cut down on flexibility or corporate agility and a lot more taxation, a lot more regulation, looking at controlling much more heavily how people are employed, how they may not be employed, and everything in between. And here in the UK, we have at the House of Lords at the moment, so our second political structure, looking at regulations and an act actually called the Employment Act Bill. And so consequently, we're looking at what's going to happen with that. That's potentially worrying for employers because it
Hmm.
looks at day one rights of any member of staff. It probably won't end up as day one, but we've gotten used to a 2-year grace period when people start accruing the rights that they would have as a permanent employee. This government's talking about day one, probably end up at about 9 months, but no one quite knows what's going on. So the political flavour of any country, without question, affects the recruitment market. And a socialist government here in the UK definitely is affecting that confidence, the lack of confidence in how things are going to pick up here in the UK. Germany, less so.
Well, that's good to know. All right. Back to APSCo. It's celebrated its 25th anniversary in 2024, right?
No. Yeah.
It's a big milestone. A quick look back. What do you see as the organization's most significant achievements in shaping the employment policy?
Look, I think in that time frame, there have been a huge number. We created APSCo initially to fight poorly written legislation on tax, IR35 legislation, which had the potential to so heavily affect the rights of contractors to work easily within an agile business that we really fought very hard of that. And that was our whole raison d'etre was all about that. We had some huge wins actually. Originally with IR35, the view was that any unpaid tax by wayward contractors should be paid by the recruitment company that placed them. Now, recruitment companies in the UK are not allowed to withhold tax just in case. That's illegal. So the idea that we would have a debt transfer to a recruitment company from a wayward contractor was a nightmare. Realistically, we were caught between that proverbial rock and a hard place. And so huge problems. Avasco got rid of that actually, and rightly so. It was appropriate. There are other small bits that we worked very hard to get rid of, and other things that we would have loved to have gotten rid of and we couldn't. And even
Right.
today, there are discussions and elements of IR35 that is wrong, actually, still poorly written, still wrong,
Right.
still hard to define whether you're within IR35 or not, still hard to prove your point. And so the reality is, we did some fantastic work on that. There's always more to be done. And once there are different you get changes in legislation, there's still more work to be done. I think some of the information that we've provided different governments all the way through in 25 years have really affected their choices. And actually what we've been able to do is get our members where they're interested involve themselves, and we've been able to really communicate the changes and how to be compliant and appropriately behaved within those changes. So I would say from a public policy point of view, there's so many in 25 years of
Sure.
things we've done. I do feel that the Employment Rights Bill at this moment in time is a big one, actually. I'd certainly feel the apprenticeship levy scenarios and information on skill shortages and how to tweak immigration to allow short-term professional contractors to come in the country. All of those are still moving through, but they're big ticket and they've made a big difference without question.
Yeah. Congratulations and thank you for all that you do for the industry. I mean, before I wanted to talk a little bit about your professional skills manifesto, but before go there, what is your strategic vision for the coming year as head of APSCo?
Yeah.
What are your key priorities? And then maybe we can also talk about the professional skills
Well,
manifesto.
look, I think from a strategic point of view, our last strategy was created about 18 months ago and is more
Right.
long term. But what I would say is that's all about professionalizing the recruitment market. We don't say industry here at APSCO, we say profession. Our members are professionals. They run professional businesses within a profession. So we never say recruitment industry at APSCO, interestingly. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
it's about professionalizing that market and showing the value that the recruitment profession adds to UK PLC and then, of course, in those other countries that we have a setup across the world. APSCO Global is the sort of overarching business that owns all APSCOs, and APSCO Global is owned 100% by its members. And so every APSCO member in whatever country owns one share of APSCO. And therefore, the strategy that we have is driven by the needs of our members. And those are on internationalization. So we help our members expand beyond where they are currently. It's about providing them with intelligence, information, and ideas and thought leadership, and giving them a platform from which to succeed with having compliance covered by our legal team and legal helplines, by having development covered by the amount of training and really high quality training that we to our members. So the view is to continue the growth of all that We've always had that view that we need to be beyond the countries that we're in. So there's always a bit of a cunning plan how to expand into other markets and big markets, the biggest market, of course. And so we've always got that plan, and the tactics change each year on exactly how we're going to do it, depending on how that profession is doing and the needs of potential members in those different countries. We've
Right.
recently got Sam Hurley in the UK to be the managing director of APSCo UK. So I've handed that over, and that's the big APSCo where it started. And my focus is on growing APSCo Global from an international and a service offering point of view for our members. So it's an interesting time for us, to be honest.
Sure. So let's talk about a little bit about your professional skills manifesto. What is it? How do you see it helping? And what are the key changes really you are advocating for?
So we put forward a manifesto for skills to the government, which was really about expanding the skill set available for end user organizations so that recruitment companies can can recruit them on their behalf. We are still short in numerous areas here in the UK for a number of years, and I don't know what the current figure is actually. I'm waiting for the updated figures on that. But the average age of a British engineer was 45 years old. That's dangerous for the engineering market. And it's been dangerous for that for a long period of time. So, from increasing the available talent pool out there, we looked at a number of things. One was to make sure there are opportunities for senior, high paid individuals to come in on short term visas, maybe 2 to 3 year visas, with a view that they can fill some of those gaps and help in that process to train other people to bring them further in the career. We're still working with that. Immigration is a hot potato with a lot of countries at the moment, whatever flavour their governments are. But that's one of the things that we're pushing for very heavily. We have an apprenticeship levy situation here in the UK. That's
Hmm.
where any employers pay a percentage of their payroll in it's called a levy, but realistically, it's been a tax. But the levy spend should be able to be spent on training and developing those people. It's been very hard to access and spend your levy, very hard. You can only spend it on certain things that are difficult to access and potentially not the right people that you want or the right training that you want. So we've really worked very hard actually at lobbying to expand how you can spend that levy. Now, at the minute, every government everywhere in the world would love more tax revenue.
Of
Unspent
course.
levy simply goes to the treasury. So it's
Mm.
easy to wonder, whatever the flavour of any government, as to how excited they are about opening up the ability for companies to spend their money on training, or whether if they don't spend it, it's a better bet for a government for it to head back to them. But hey, difficult to say. I think the other thing is we've pushed really very strongly to actually get government and end user organizations to communicate to make sure there's not such a gap between graduates coming out of university with skills that aren't necessarily relevant for the needs of employers to actually make sure there's more communication from that point of view across the piece. And so consequently, it's been a big piece of work and we're constantly working at pushing that over. But we do believe that there are changes that can be made that could make a big difference and open things up. And we will continue. We'll continue.
Thank you. I know you have a strategic partnership with LinkedIn. Not to get into details, but how has that worked? What have been the biggest benefits of this collaboration, and are there any lessons learned that would be useful for professionals as well as staffing firms, agencies, from working from with a platform of that scale?
Yeah, I look, it's been 3 years now, that relationship, just kind of coming up to that, and it was me that brokered it, actually. It came off the back of my getting to know LinkedIn much more. I mean, we all use LinkedIn, obviously, but it came off the back of problems that my members had during lockdown when they tied themselves into big contracts in order to get big discounts, but then weren't using the volume of advertising on LinkedIn that they hoped that they were going to. And actually, I got to know some of the senior management team at LinkedIn who were looking to try and help, and there were moments their hands were a bit tied. But understanding really the recruitment profession is part of an ecosystem, and companies like LinkedIn, but particularly LinkedIn, are part of that and a major part of that ecosystem. Now, you can decide that the recruitment profession is an island and everyone else is the enemy and sharks in choppy water, or you could admit that we're all part of the same ecosystem and that we can help each other. And in speaking to LinkedIn, I found them to be generous, actually, generous with their support of the British recruitment market. And in fact, they're global members. They support us in all of our different countries. They've given us the most amazing information that only people like LinkedIn have access to. And truly, they've been generous with that. They've hosted a number of things and really have helped us service our membership base. And so consequently, I would say that from APSCo's perspective, it's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure, actually. Have we had any difficulties? I can't think of any. And I am well known for saying things as they are. I really am. Not only have we not had difficulties, it's been a pleasure. If I look from their perspective, what did they want to get out of that relationship? I think that was all about understanding the recruitment market at source with recruiters, with chief execs of recruitment business and staffing firms, understanding the issues that those people are facing day to day, and making sure, therefore, their product range is developed appropriately to meet the needs of that customer base and to give something back to a market that they rely on as well as all of us and are part of. So I think LinkedIn have become, maybe they always were, but they have shown that they have become active participant, active, generous participants in this whole staffing and recruitment ecosystem. And that's real value add, actually. It's real value add. And it's a dilemma, isn't it? You're a great big company. The minute the market dies, everyone wants to have a different contract. They wish they hadn't signed a big one. And LinkedIn have a lot of staff, a lot of setup costs, and a lot of people are over the world to pay salaries to as well. And therefore, there in these times, the needs of their client base and the needs of, a big corporate like that can look as though they're not working for the same thing. But the reality is everybody is working for the same thing. And that's making sure, as LinkedIn would say, is making sure everyone has access to fulfill individual requirements, to fulfill their potential. And realistically, that's the same as the professional recruitment market and indeed the rest of the recruitment and staffing sectors. So it's been a real pleasure. What have I learned? I've learned that decision making can take a hellish long time in big companies. I think we sort of knew it, but
Yeah, oh, yeah.
that happens. I've learned that you need to write decent documentation for things because stuff gets passed on and on and on. And if it's just verbal, it gets lost. There's Chinese whispers and it will get lost in translation. And I've also learned that if you can create real relationships with real people within businesses, together you can achieve something special. You can make things happen. And yeah, that's what I would say about LinkedIn. actually.
Oh, thank you. Moving on to a topic which is, I think, in a lot of people's minds, immigration.
Yeah.
Oh, what is going on? I mean, with APSCo operating where it does, it is a crucial and sometimes controversial issue. How has it helped and hurt recruitment in these markets, especially I'm thinking UK, Germany, Australia, Singapore, and now Malaysia?
Look, Singapore makes its own rules and doesn't need to worry too much about what everyone thinks about it. And they've been very clear on what they're trying to do for that very small country. And therefore, one just needs to accept that Singapore does not want to expand and open its gates for very many people at all. And they feel that they want to get the balance right according to them. Does that affect Singapore? Well, it does a bit because it means they are very talent short. And for certain roles, it's very hard to find the right people for Singaporean businesses, but also for international businesses that have made Singapore their base point for Asia Pac, realistically. But that's a decision, and one needs to respect the way that Singapore is run as a country. I think if I look at a lot of the Western world, then things ebb and flow rather, don't they? And I think from an immigration point of view, especially from a European perspective, and it's always American perspective, it's been more about politics and more about
Yeah.
opinions, sometimes cheap wins, than it has been, in my view, as an issue about what the country really needs moving
Yeah.
forward. And so, what we need to do in APSCo, in each of the places that we're at, is work within the law that has been set out by the country itself. And it would be wrong for me to try and push my views of immigration, the potential and the win it's given the UK through a hellish long time on other countries. That's not appropriate for us to do. So each APSCo, wherever we are, generally is candidate short and talent short. And if you think about it, that's where recruitment companies thrive because there's a market to find people that end user customers cannot find themselves. And so consequently, it's an issue in all of our countries, but it's one that each country will dictate the way that they deal with it. Our job is to lobby in the UK and in some of the other countries as well, where APSCos in those countries will lobby. But voters vote for specific things. It's not for us to suggest that they're wrong in any way. What I do know in the UK is that we have a shortage of babies being born. We have a shortage of talent at the kind of age group where we'd like to recruit them. That shortage of talent now is only going to get worse without talent being born in the country unless we can go further afield to attract talent to the UK. We know that it needs to happen.
What about Brexit? Sorry, didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, but look, Brexit has affected us. I think it's affected
Yeah.
us in from an immigration point of view,
Right.
but it's affected us in that ease of movement at the bottom end of the recruitment market. So whether people to work in fields, in picking crops or whatever else it may be, it's affected us quite dramatically actually in that area. But that was always kind of about cheap labour. Has it affected us further up the tree in that professional sector? Yes, but less so. By far the majority of immigration in the UK is legal immigration, and people can apply to and let somebody come into this country, and applications do go through. So our immigration is mainly legal. Has it affected that? Less than you would think at
Mm.
that top end, but we're still talent short. And we will be talent short because it takes a hellish long time to train people to go into the National Health Service. It takes a hellish long time to get people. Actually, if we look at the bottom end in care homes and things like that, where we're short without question, and coming out of the EU has made it less easy for people to do it. Now, our government has recently brokered some arrangements that will allow young people to travel throughout the EU, include the UK in that. They're counting young people as up to 35. I still don't come in that category, but that's quite a broad basis, I think, to count young people. I think that will give us more flexibility at perhaps the bottom end for more junior jobs, but we're talent short. So I think immigration has been made a big hot potato for governments all over the world, actually. I think that's a shame. And I think that, but it is what it is. I think it's a shame and a real political issue rather than something that can be planned and appropriately controlled in each country, depending on the needs of the country that is there, actually.
Yeah. It's less about connecting people to meaningful work and opportunities. It's
No,
more about, I guess, the political situation.
it
Fair.
is. Yeah, it is.
Well, what advice, given the current climate, would you give to staffing companies to stay resilient and competitive in today's climate?
Yeah, I think what advice would I give? I would say the market's coming back, so I'm going to give a positive. It was funny, in January, I was asked when the market has come back at an event. And of course, I had no idea at all. And so I picked a date of May the 17th. And what was really funny, and that's my birthday, I just thought I'll say any date at about middle of the year. So I said May, and then I said actually May the 17th. What was hilarious were people were glued to me thinking I knew something that they didn't. I didn't. Nobody knows. Talks to tariffs and tariffs across the piece change things. There's been ebbs and flows. We think it's come back. It hasn't come back. Ooh, it's been all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is the market's coming back. And what I would say is this: that's an opportunity for us. Most companies I know, all companies that I know, will have trimmed their excess spend. They will have kept hold of any cash that they have in order to look at how they spend it. What I would say is this: spend wisely. I would say be resolute in understanding what you do and what your customers need. And what your customers need now may be really quite different from what they needed when the market fell off that cliff edge. Certainly, don't think as a business you can go back to selling in the way you used to or servicing in the way that you used to, because the markets and expectations out there have changed dramatically. So going back to what you used to do is simply not an option. It's about moving quickly and in the right direction.
So, Anne, given the current climate, what's your top advice for, I guess, agencies and staffing firms to stay competitive and resilient in this market?
I can only say that every recruitment company owner, chief exec, whatever it may be, will already have been saving cash where they can. They will already look at efficiencies. They've already done, I suspect, all of that stuff. Do you think it's always a mistake when at this stage in a market difficult time that people make their finance director into a CEO or a managing director? I'm hoping nobody listening has done that. Always a mistake. Not that they're not very nice people, wrong people when the market's growing. What I would say is this: you've covered the how to stop spending so much money. What you need to do is look at how you can sell and deliver great business in the right way in a growing market. So keep agile. Don't spend loads of money now you think the market's coming back. Make sure your tech stack helps you. And it might be now that you look at how to get some quick wins from artificial intelligence rather than that kind of paralyzed view of we need to do something, but we don't know what to do and we don't know how much we're going to spend. And so we are not doing anything at the moment. Look at what will make a difference. I think be very client focused. What do your clients want? Ask them, for heaven's sake. What are they going to need in the next few years? What service offering you giving? And let me tell you, there is no way that selling in the recruitment market in order to have an opportunity to deliver hasn't changed full circle. Okay. Look at your sales process, look at your staff. A lot of us had staff that perhaps didn't need to sell when it was so candidate short a market, but now you do. But the selling isn't the same. People are not buying in the same way. You need to make sure that you have well trained, senior people that can present, but actually a marketing team. So that when someone reviews you, checks you out, we all look for reviews. Everybody does on everything we buy. Your client base, your potential client base, and candidates are doing exactly that. And let me tell you, when people start looking at their own LinkedIn page, even, some of them are dreadful and caught in a time warp. Make sure you do invest in marketing. Make sure that because you got rid of your marketing department, because we all think we're salespeople, selling's about marketing these days. It's changed. And so make sure you have a marketing person, team, however big you are, whatever it is, that makes sure that content's going out. And when people look to verify who you are, as you give them information, you have generosity of helping them with their business, that they check you out and you are exactly who you say you were. And I would say more than ever, make sure that the people within your business are engaged. Make sure that what they really want to do is fulfill themselves by placing people in great roles. Because if they don't, they're not right for you. They need to be fulfilled by that, not just engaged. They need to be fulfilled. Engaged is yesterday's news. Fulfilled by the opportunity that we're giving them to give people an opportunity to change their role and give end user customers an opportunity to fulfill their business needs. And as an owner of a business, you need to excite people into wanting to do that. If you can't do it, sell your business to somebody who can. That's what I think.
Well, thank you. I know people will be very glad to hear from you and also really glad to hear that the markets are going up. So, things are coming back slowly. So, well, thank you for your time and thank you for your insight. A pleasure always.
Thank you. Pleasure to see you, Subhadra, as well. And good luck to everybody out there. It's for us to take.